All right, I am joined today on Inside Golf Podcast by two gentlemen that I spend a lot of time talking golf with every Wednesday night on our Ball Knowers After Dark premium show at Inside Sports Network. We're not going to really talk any golf today at all. In fact, we are going to turn our attention to football, which I'm pretty excited about because I haven't talked football with anyone yet this year whatsoever. So I'm fascinated to hear some of your guys' opinions. I am joined in the bottom right corner by Kyle Hewitt. Kyle, how are you this afternoon?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for football season. The
Yeah.
the end of golf season has been kicking me in the teeth a little bit. So
Yeah. The last 2 weeks were shit for me.
yeah, I did. I was like, I wasn't close to the board last week
Yeah.
anywhere. So I'm a big football guy as well. Like football, I think it has always been my first, love in terms of sports, in terms of following, betting on. Um, football came first for me, and golf obviously has a special place in my heart now as well, and is one of my favorite things to bet on. But fantasy football growing up, before I knew, you guys, before I was talking about golf, before I was doing anything, like fantasy football is one of my favorite things to do every year. Just to give a quick background, and this version of fantasy football that we'll talk about, best ball,
Best ball.
is one that it's not brand new, but it's newer. It's been around for 4 or 5 years now. It's hosted on DraftKings. It's hosted on Underdog. They do big drafts every year. The pool has grown. This year, Underdog is a $2 million competition, which is the biggest. Best
Gosh, 2 million, huh?
two.
What's the
15
entry?
million
What's
in the
the entry?
pot, 2 million to winner.
No, it's 2 million to the winner, 1 million to second, $25
Wow.
entry. That's their big. That's their big like.
What is that? 150 max?
Yeah, 150 max, $25 buy-in.
Wow.
So DraftKings has similar $20 buy-in, 150 max with a milli up top. But yeah, Underdog this year is doing 2 million to first, 1 million to second. So yeah, it's just kind of something that's grown over over the years. I think what people like about it, before we went live, Rish was mentioning this, and I'll pass it off to Rish after this, is just, I think today's day and age, like, people have a very short attention span. So I think being able, and I think people's favorite parts of fantasy football is always the draft. That's always been my favorite part, like drafting against your friends. That draft night always felt bigger than like the regular season to me. And this puts a big premium on drafting. And then you don't have to do anything for the whole season. You draft your full team. You don't add people. You don't drop people. You don't set your lineup. The best version of your lineup that you can produce is your starting lineup for that week. So that's the big intro and the sell on best ball, and how I became it, how I got into it, why I like it, kind of why we thought it was something to talk about. But pass it off to Rish now.
Rishi, how would you characterize, like, where does football fall for you compared to tennis and golf?
Yeah, so like Kyle, I would say football was kind of my entryway into DraftKings, to daily fantasy sports. It's my gateway drug. Yeah. And then it was kind of golf. And then, although tennis was kind of the first sport I always played, I didn't really get into the daily fantasy side until later on. So yeah, football has been kind of always kind of the most fun. And I would say it's partially just because, again, I'd watched it forever. And a lot of the reasons that Kyle mentioned, drafting with friends, my home league, we tend to go somewhere every year, or at least a subset of us tend to go somewhere every year. So drafting is really fun. The other part of it is that, in transparency, we do this to win some money. And the pots for football on daily fantasy, whether it's DraftKings or Underdog, they're insane. They are absolutely insane every week. They're kind of like what its signature event looks like for golf events, times like 10, but every week for all 18 weeks. So, and then that's not even including the playoffs. So football is definitely still king, I would say, as far as enjoyment level as well. I think there's sharp angles more in other sports because there's so much volume in football, but as Kyle mentioned, best ball is a relatively newer market, and so there's still some edges there, which are not existent in the normal week-to-week football.
Kyle, if I was asking you, like, why should I because I love fantasy as well, but I don't play like NFL DraftKings really, but I do have a couple fantasy football leagues that I've been in for years that I care a lot about. And so I'm very familiar with like playing fantasy football every single week, setting my lineup, like making moves on the waiver wire. I listen to fantasy football podcasts. Like I care about it and follow it pretty closely. What would be the argument for best? Like why would you say that you prefer best ball over regular fantasy?
Yeah, I think it's two-part answer for me. I still love regular fantasy, but the two-part answer for me is one, like for me, I like to do the 150 max. There's other people who like to do, other things, maybe more high stakes. I also do a 555.
You did a single entry though that did really well last year, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the 555, which is a 150 max contest. I did a single bullet for that finished like 24th in the biggest contest on DraftKings.
God, they have a 555 150 max.
Yeah.
Did people actually max that out?
Yeah,
probably.
That's a crazy high investment to max that out.
So there's also there's other cool ones too though, like that you could do that are way less in like there's another contest that I maxed was $100 3 max. So it's 100. So you get $300 investment for 3 teams. You do 3 drafts, and $100,000 to first place of that competition. Way smaller pool size. There's also a $250 single entry that's interesting.
250 single entry is good.
Yep.
As you think of it like a 17-week investment.
Yep, exactly. So you're chopping that over 17 weeks. So I put a little more in this year. I had a lot of success last year. So I just kind of wanted to. I've had success in the best ball format in golf, in football. For me, that's part of why I like it as well too. Is like you're drafting against other people that you don't know. Like you have no idea who these people are. You have no idea what their tendencies are necessarily. But like it's like a competition, right? Like drafting is the competition. So the drafting becomes that much more important. So like if us 3 are drafting and with the first pick, I take Jamar Chase. Like that should signal to you guys in best ball that I probably want Joe Burrow as well. And you guys could fuck me over by taking Joe Burrow, because I took him. I had the first pick. There's a massive gap in between my next group of picks. You could take Burrow, and then I'm not able to get that stack, which is a lot of what you're looking for in best ball.
Right.
Is having some sort of stack for week 17 that you think that these guys could go off and really be the key part of your lineup in the finals. But
is there one draft per contest though?
What like what do you mean by that? Like,
well, for example, like the team that you create in your single entry, that is coming from a draft, right?
And it's cadenced in terms of the play. So like you go against those people for 13 weeks, I want to say.
Okay.
And if you finish 1 or 2, so if you have the top first or second points, that's also why I like it, because I feel like in fantasy football, a lot of times you have a team that has great, like scores a ton, and you just can't, you're playing guys in the league and every week you lose the guy, you just so happen to play the guy who scores. This eliminates having to worry about that because it's total point. You don't have a record. It's just total points in the season. If you're top 1 or 2 in terms of total points in the season, you advance to the next round. You then go against 12 people. There's 3 rounds of playoffs, and then the final is in week 17. So you have to advance. You have a season long, and if you go top 2 there, you basically get your money back and a little bit more. And for that entry, then you go into week by week, and there's 3 week by week playoffs after that. So you have to win. You have to win out of 12 people. You have to win your group. In week 14, 15, 16, and then week 17, it's the last 1,000 people that are left in the. So it's like typically like I think the $20 one is 350,000 people this year. So the last week is like 1,000 people, and it's legitimately, if you make it to that, it's winner. It's like you're just going against everybody.
But teams get eliminated throughout the season in phases.
Yes, but if you're one of the last 1,000, you're playing for $1 million week 17. If your team scores more than the other 999 teams, you win $1 million. So it's really cool.
And it's based on that week 17. It's not based on your season points.
Only week 17, which makes so like last year, that's kind of where I got a little bit screwed over. I had such a good team the whole season, and James Conner. There was a few guys. There was 2 guys that got hurt in the week 17 in the week 16 game. Excuse me. That I won. 2 of the guys who were starters in my lineup, generally speaking, got hurt, and then I had to slot other guys in that weren't as good as them. But yeah, you don't that's just a part of the game. Like if your guys get hurt, it's kind of like you're shit out of luck. So
yeah. Rishi, how do you look at it strategically compared to because do you play NFL DFS really?
Yeah, so
I know you play Showdown quite a bit on a Thursday night or a Sunday night.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I've always dabbled, gotten into the best ball thing the last 2 years. And here's the biggest differentiators that I enjoy, and I bring it up when you bring up strategy because I think they're important to bring up. Again, after you draft, there's no roster management throughout the season. So think of it like when you create a player pool for a week of DFS golf. Imagine if that whole pool was all in one lineup. You don't need to figure out who the 6 optimal are because it automatically raises the top 6 players. So one of the things you want to factor more, obviously, is draft strategy and thinking about, okay, well, how do I draft differently relative to if I was just drafting for 1 week? So if you're drafting for a whole season, you got to look a lot ahead. You got to look and say, okay, well, and Kyle and I were talking about this before we get into the players part. Joe Flacco was just named starter for the Browns. Well, the Browns are kind of tanking. Would you want to draft a Joe Flacco? Well, one, I don't know if you'd want to draft Joe Flacco anyway, but if they're going to probably start him for a couple weeks, Browns end up going 2-4. Maybe they bench him to start Shedeur Sanders or Dylan Gabriel. It's would you want to draft? So those are things you got to think ahead of. And that, when it comes to strategy, is really looking at the long term, as Kyle mentioned, looking 17 weeks ahead that way. So there's no roster management. So again, you're able to take deeper shots on certain players. So you're able to say, hey, this guy was a 4th round pick, but after he gets a couple weeks into the season, maybe he won't play for the first 4 or 5 weeks, but injuries can come up. The first or second string wide receiver could get hurt. This guy will become a starter. So you can take deeper and longer shots, which also makes it more fun. You get a little bit more engagement with sleeper players, younger players. That's another thing that you have to keep in mind is you're really building for depth. That's a part of the strategy as well, relative to on a week-to-week basis, you build with what's available, who's starting that week. When you're building for best ball, you're really building for, hey, what's the potential upside of really big long shots? And you get to take those long shots too.
Well, it also takes away the annoyance of in-season fantasy football injuries, which I think, I mean, you're still getting affected in the same way if you draft Christian McCaffrey in best ball and he tears his ACL in the first game of the season. But then it's kind of just okay, you know what you're working with and you're not having to play the waiver wire every single week to come up with an answer to a problem that you're just reminded of every single week. It is a lot less in-season week-to-week management, which is highly intriguing to me as somebody who spends so much time creating golf content and in the golf streets. That month of January, where golf and football, the football season, the fantasy season is ending and golf season is starting back up again. That's always such a tough month for me because it's the only month where they're both kind of going at the exact same time. I'm going to definitely do it this year. I mean, would you recommend, do you typically play on DraftKings or Underdog more, Kyle?
I like both. They're slightly different. DraftKings, I think, is full point PPR, whereas Underdog might be half point PPR, and then DraftKings also does bonuses for 300 yards to QBs for passing yards, and then 100 yards for receiving and rushing, which Underdog doesn't. So Underdog's more straightforward. It's a very standard scoring fantasy league. I think the drafters are a little sharper on Underdog, in my opinion, than DraftKings. I don't think you're wrong.
But we're still early, though, right? It still seems like a lot of the smartest football people aren't yet in the best ball streets. Of course, I'm sure there are some great best ball players that have emerged already and create like best ball content and stuff like that. But relatively speaking, compared to like the NFL in general, it still feels like we're a little bit early, at least.
The one thing I'll amend to that, because Kyle and I were talking about it earlier, I was asking Kyle, and this is an important factor. When do you draft? Like, do you draft way early on? Do you draft now? Or do you draft in about, in a week or so? And he was mentioning that, and he can speak on this directly too, that he doesn't really have a preference. And the reason being, and I was getting some strategy based on this. One of the reasons why it doesn't matter is because Kyle was mentioning you're playing in these early contests. For the first 13 weeks, you're playing against the 10 people in your contest.
And everybody's drafting at the same time.
Everyone's drafting at the same time. So you could mix. So my thought would be is do some early, do some now, do some right before the season. But at least your early competition, you have the same information they have. So to your point, yes, there's probably some sharp folks that are like, I want to see every bit of information, every bit of injury updates. I want to know who all the starters are. So we're going to wait until the last second. With that said, there's probably some edge to saying, hey, I'm going to play in a pool because I think I'm sharper than anyone that has limited information. So I can get as many like early teams in and then maybe dabble some teams later on. So I think there's also some strategy as to when you're going to start drafting. And there probably are a lot of sharp folks that are taking that angle that, hey, we're going to draft on limited information because we think our limited information is a higher value than somebody else's.
Do you have a preference, Kyle, of when you like to draft? I mean, I'm sure you've already repped a ton because I know you have no patience, but do you like to, when you're playing against other people, because in the contest that you've already joined, you guys are all doing the same draft, right? Do you prefer earlier in the season or right up against the buzzer?
Yeah. So this is also, I'll answer the question, but this is also, you asked why do this versus a regular fantasy league? This is part of why I love like best ball so much, is because there really is no wrong answer. To me, like, again, this is part of the fact that I think best ball is still relatively untapped. I think you could look at lineups that won big contests and some were drafted really early. I think you can look at others that some were drafted a little later when they had all the information, but I don't think there's a wrong answer. To me, personally, I'm at the point where I'm such a fantasy football sicko in general that I feel like I went into drafts early, and I was calling this out in the Discord as well. And there were, and this is like when you're making your ownership projections, when there's not a lot of information, stuff is just wrong. It's all out of flux, right? So similarly, ADP, when things just get started, right? When literally there's not enough information really.
You're working with an incomplete data set.
To me, there's an edge there. So like at that very beginning point, there's an edge. For example, like George Kittle was getting drafted like 67th, which is like, to me, was one of the most ridiculous, like outrageous, like points of like ADP. He's now being drafted 36, right? Yeah. So like that was one where it was clear mispriced. Also, I thought rookies were getting overdrafted because it's just like you want that next thing, and maybe you don't know everything you need to know about that next thing, and people just kind of like grab the guy because they don't want to miss somebody potentially hitting. So like rookies, generally speaking, at the beginning of best ball, right when you start, their ADP is generally higher because people want to grab them or are more prone to grab them quicker. So just from doing it, there's things like that I know that like to me is an advantage because I've done it so many times. I've looked at it from so many angles. I think from a beginner standpoint, you should just be it's not necessarily when you're drafting, it's how you're drafting. I'd say
and contest selection, I would imagine.
And contest selection, but like further to so to me, the answer is I told Rishi, I drafted 65% of all the drafts I'll do like before preseason started because I thought there was somewhat of an edge to do it that way, and then I did 35%. I'm still drafting some where I let the information come out. Where you see some of this stuff. But like just a perfect example of like what makes best ball great. And I just wanted to hammer this point home because I think you, Andy, will appreciate it. I think people that play this game will appreciate it. It's like a total market environment, which is part of like why drafting over the course of a few months is cool to begin with, because your strategy could change massively from when you don't have the information to when you have the information. So perfect example is right now this guy Keyshawn Judkins, right, on Cleveland, who's dealing with the domestic.
I feel like there's always a random young fast receiver that people fall in love with for fantasy before the season.
I'll give you another example like that, but this is part of what makes the market like so cool and so interesting to look at, and there's so many different ways to attack it. Like Keyshawn Judkins, right? Because I track all this information. Join ISN. You get this for free. That's my plug.
The cheat sheet, which I'm going to reference in a second, is phenomenal, and it's completely free.
Totally free, has everything you need, even if you don't agree with the rankings, has everything you need to help you draft a best ball roster if you've never done it before. Even
ADP, all that stuff.
Everything. It has an ADP week over week. It has the biggest changers. It has all of their over-unders with DraftKings. It has the teams over-unders with Vegas lines. It has the offensive ranks from last year. It has their fantasy stats from last year. It has their passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards. It's literally an encyclopedia of fantasy football in an Excel spreadsheet for free for ISN subs that we want.
And even anyone. I mean, we hope that you love it so much that you join the Discord so you could like sweat it with us and chat with us about drafts. But you can just go to InsideSportsNetwork.com. You don't have to be a member and see the cheat sheet that we're going to talk about. Anyway,
so the real good example is Keyshawn Judkins. This kid played at Ohio State last year. He was the one part of the 1-2 with Trayvon Henderson, who's on the Patriots now. Keyshawn Judkins in the college football playoffs was the fucking guy. Like, this guy won Ohio State the national championship. Like, he was a fucking wagon. They were this kid was carrying them in the playoffs. He gets drafted second in the second round by the Cleveland Browns. He's on paper a fucking home run prospect. He's going to be the guy that gets their carries. In my opinion, they also drafted Dylan Sampson, who's a good running back. But in my opinion, like, if you take out, and if it's player A versus player B, Sampson can't hold Judkins' jockstrap as far as I'm concerned. They're both good players. Judkins had this domestic abuse case come over him, right? Like, he got in trouble with the law. And so just to put some time frame and information around this, after the draft, right after the draft, before this domestic abuse came out, Judkins was being drafted 83rd on Underdog, 87th on DraftKings. Fast forward 2 weeks to when this news came out, and his ADP on Underdog has dropped from 83 to 112, and his draft position on DraftKings went from 87 to 125. Just came out 2 days ago. The girl's not going to file charges against him. The Browns have not signed him still because they're quote unquote waiting for more news to come out with the NFL's investigation. Well, let me tell you something. I'm not much of a lawyer, but if there's no fucking legal case, then the NFL is going to find nothing in their investigation because there's nothing to investigate because there's not a case. So the Browns are going to eventually sign him. And once he gets signed, I'm telling you, this guy's ADP is tanking back down to 83. It's already gone back down. So again, it floated up to 125.
And it shows on the sheet movement.
Yep, shows on the sheet all of this information as well.
Yeah.
You're now already seeing it tanking down, right? It's already going back down to 1.8. So it was up to 112. It's up to 125. It's already down to 115, right? So it's already going the other direction now that this news has come out. But so to me, like, that's what makes best ball fun. That's what makes best ball cool. It's not just a domestic abuse case. I apologize for using that as the example, but that's what drives some of this information. Here's another example, like Chris Godwin, for example. You don't know. This is another, like, maybe a more reasonable example. People, like, all of his coaches have said this guy's great. He's on track. His rehab's going great. He's going to play this year, but he's quote unquote uncertain for week one. So when that uncertain for week one came out, his ADP started tanking as well.
Yeah.
And like, to me, okay, he's uncertain for week one. So what if he plays week two? if you play, and now you have all these people overreacting to the fact that somebody came out and said Chris Godwin's uncertain for week 1. His ADP is tanking, plummeting to, God knows what, just because some guy said he might not be ready for week 1. It's information like that. It's stuff like that that makes best ball fun. You can buy these guys dips. You can wait on certain guys' ADPs to get to places where they're more draftable. So it's just all stuff like that. It's like a stock market, right? And that's what's really interesting to me.
No, I love this stuff. I want to start talking about some of the players a little bit. Rishi, I'm looking at the cheat sheet right now.
Yep.
Of the top guys that are going to be first rounders, like at the top of the board, what stands out to you? Do you have any major disagreements with Kyle's like top 5 to 10 players? Or is there a guy in the top 10 that you are hoping that you have the ability to draft? Like, is there a drafting position and a player that you are wanting in round 1?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So
great question.
Yeah, I think that, first I'll say Kyle did an amazing job with the rankings. So overall, I would say conceptually, we kind of have a similar strategy. I'd say, and we bring it over from other sports. We're kind of the leverage crew. So we like low cost, high upside players. And it's the same thing with best ball. So similarly, when it comes to the first round, I think high up to top tier running backs are at an absolute premium. But I do think that I prefer later first round from a pick standpoint, because I do think it's a really deep top of the board this year. So if it's earlier on, I think my preference, even above like the Jamar Chase of the world, I love Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, I think he's just like an absolute, I mean, obviously he's been a workhorse, is a stud throughout his career. I think now you have...
Is that offensive line healthy is the question to me, because that was what screwed the Lions, I think, towards the end of the season, is they built up way too many injuries.
So there's a couple things that I like about the Gibbs situation. One, I think he's going to have more carries than he's had relative to Montgomery, because there is a new offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson's obviously with the Bears. New offensive coordinator says he likes speed. He likes verticality. He's not like a slot merchant going to St. Brown all the time. Those are kind of things that I like as far as changes go. You talked about the offensive line. It's gotten weaker. I think those sort of things affect more an inside the tackle runner, like a David Montgomery. And then you play more of a Gibbs, like how Devon Achane is playing with the Dolphins. You put him out a little bit out there for those bubble screens. So I think the receiving upside, all those sort of things, as far as like those top running backs, when you're looking at Bijon Robinson, CMC, those sort of players, I like Gibbs a ton. And I think he's going to go off. If I'm later in the first round, I mentioned Devon Achane. I think he's just absolutely nuts for the same exact reasons. You want receiving upside, with any of these running backs. Those are the sort of players I really, really like. But I certainly do think it's really deep at wide receiver as well. But those type of players that I'm trying to leave with in the first round would be like a Gibbs if it's early, Devon Achane if it's a little bit later on.
Kyle, do you have a drafting spot in the first round where when you get a certain spot, you're like, okay, fuck yeah, this is where I want to be in round 1?
I like being 10. I like being 10.
Interesting. What you just like that end of the snake?
And I just think the receipt there, you can get, like, just looking at my rankings, even if you're not looking at, like, Neighbors has been going like 9 or 10, and Neighbors is one of my favorite picks of the year. And I know that I'm a big Giants fan, but I just think that offense is going to be better than it was last year. With the quarterbacks they have now are just exponentially better than Daniel Jones. Neighbors is going to be the guy that gets the concentration. The delta between Neighbors and their second guy versus the delta between like Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. And
who is the Giants' number 2 receiver?
Wandale Robinson from Kentucky. He's a slot merchant. He gets a ton of receptions. He's not a guy that takes the top off the defense. He'll get a lot of love, but I just think Neighbors is going to be their guy. So like I like that. I also think Nico Collins could have a massive year. He's a guy that's going like 10. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's going 10. Another great receiving option. Puka Nacua is tanking now because of the another interesting thing, right? Like.
What happened with Stafford?
There's news out there that like Stafford's back is bad. But that's what's so crazy about best ball is the quarterback of the team having news that he's unhealthy. The wide receiver, by the way, is completely healthy. completely fine. His ADP's gone down like 2 spots over the past 2 weeks since this news has come out. I still think Puka, me personally, is a home run guy. Like he's going to get. It doesn't even matter who his quarterback is. He's going to get his. So that's why I like it. It's like I don't have to pick a guy. Like if any of those 4 guys fall to me, like I'm happy. I could potentially get 2 of them. Also, another wide receiver I like potentially on the way back is Brian Thomas Jr. from Jacksonville, who I think is a total stud. If you don't get Brian Thomas Jr., you can run back Derrick Henry or Devin Achane. So you really start with 2 really strong guys, I think, in the 10 hole this year, just with how it's shaped out. So that's my preference, but I really don't like being 12. That's the only thing. Like I don't mind.
How do you feel about being like 1, 2, or 3?
I don't mind it. I mean, like I'm pretty much grabbing. I'm not pretty much. If I have the first pick, I'm taking Jamar. Like,
it seems consensus. Like everyone is taking Chase with number 1. Like that's just been decided. It seems like.
Yeah, and I don't think it's like a bad thing whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy won the Triple Crown last year, and he did it not having a real training camp because of contract negotiations going on the entire time. That Bengals offense is like, I just think Chase is going to continue to get his, and I think
there's no reason to believe that they won't be extremely explosive again, right? There hasn't been any major changes.
Re-sign Henderson. Not Henderson. Re-signed Higgins. They haven't been able to re-sign Henderson. If that means anything, it's only going to mean
they're going to need to catch up more,
to score more points. So they'll be airing it out more. I just think that offense. The thing is, like, and it's important to like differentiate, is like fantasy football and football are 2 different things, right? So like the Bengals could be a bad team next year. And could be a very good fantasy team. So like to me, like I'm not even talking about them as a football team. I'm just talking about their offense. And to me, their offense, you got Jamar Chase, you got Chase Brown, who came on like a freight train last year. They drafted this kid Todd Brooks as their number 2 running back, got rid of Zach Moss. They're high on him. You got T. Higgins, one of the best number 2 receivers in the league. You got Gesicki as your tight end, who can stretch the defense, absolutely catch touchdowns. They've got a lot of guys that can do it a lot of different ways, so no need to overcomplicate it there. I think the interesting thing, the big interesting, like the clear as day in my mind, like thing that's interesting is Bijon. And I was somebody who actually thought that Bijon, like I didn't mind the Bijon over Saquon take, but Bijon's being drafted over Saquon.
That's interesting to me. I had Bijon last year, and Saquon outscored him last year.
Absolutely.
By a pretty healthy margin.
Saquon was like the best. Saquon was the number 1 player in fantasy.
Why do you think Bijon is getting the look over him?
It's because Saquon, there's all these stats out there, and they're really like relevant stats in my opinion. Like I don't dispute this whatsoever. I will say that like I thought Bijon being drafted over Saquon was going to be like this contrarian thing. And now that it's not this contrarian thing, I don't like it as much.
Yeah, agreed.
That being said, the reason is because Saquon, if you look at his stats from last year, if you include his in the playoffs, he had 450 touches, right? Like that is an insane amount of touches. Saquon's also only had 2 seasons in the NFL where he's played every single game. Last year was one of them. So you're betting on that. And if you look at the stats of guys who have had these historic 2,000-yard seasons with all of these touches, how they followed it up the next year, it's not good. It's just not a good it's not a good stat. People can say, oh, well, it's Saquon Barkley. Well, if you look at the other guys on the list, you probably would have said the same thing about, oh, this guy could have done it because he's this guy.
Right.
So that's the reason. But to me, like and this is, again, something I think that's interesting for best ball. Like Saquon, as soon as the drafts were going off, was going to every time. Like it was Jamar, Saquon 1, 2, and there was never a question. Now is
Bijon 3 generally, or Jefferson?
No, actually it was Jefferson 3, because now Jefferson, another guy that has this hamstring injury, another guy, by the way, I think you keep buying the dip on. Justin Jefferson had the same exact fucking hamstring injury rumors last year, heading into the year. He dropped to 8 ADP. He was the second best wide receiver in fantasy.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So just again, but yeah, no, I think the Saquon thing's very interesting. Like I got him like 5 in a draft yesterday.
That's
like
pretty good.
At 5, I'll take him. But Sorry, I spoke way too long.
I only have one. Well, I wanted to ask Rishi because you mentioned stacking, Kyle.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Do you have an offense that you might be higher on than consensus? Like Kyle talked about how you can stack, and if you see like an edge on a potential offense, you might not just be able to capitalize on like the obvious players on that offense, but you might go even more all in on taking some of their bench guys as well. Do you have a team that you think is flying a little bit under the radar this year?
Yeah, and I think Kyle and I are pretty aligned again. I think there's a couple teams, but the one that I'm really highlighting is the Jags. I think the Jaguars are in a division.
What do you think about the new coach?
So that's Liam Neeson coming from the Bucks. I mean, or not Neeson, sorry. This has got me. I've watched too much Taken recently, but no, I love the new hire. You know, coming from the Bucks and being able to run. You saw how that offense was humming with Baker. I think that's a huge upgrade from the offensive side. I think it's a big year and it's a must year for Trevor Lawrence, who obviously, you know, he was one of the most touted prospects since really Andrew Luck.
I'm not fully out on him yet.
And I'm not fully out on him either. And his legs were kind of moving last year. There was 2 weeks where he put up a ton of points. It's on the DFS slate as well. I think that, you know, with the right coach, he can get going here. They obviously drafted Travis Hunter, who's going to be, you know, he's going to be an unbelievable wide receiver. There are some questions of how much is he going to play at wide receiver, if they need to play him at defense. There's some of that in the air. But as Kyle mentioned, you know, Brian Thomas, absolutely unbelievable rookie season, comes back, young wide receiver class. The questions would be around, you know, stacking, how you'd involve potentially running backs there. But as far as depth goes, they also drafted a young guy, Bijon, who's absolutely unbelievable as well. So I think there's a lot of ways to go. Trevor Lawrence, Travis Hunter, Brian Thomas, potentially getting, you know, one of their second or third string running backs, Tank Bigsby, are going there. I think there's a lot of runway for that offense, and I think it's pretty cheap. That's the one offense that I've seen myself getting a little bit more exposure to relative to a couple other cheap offenses as well.
Lawrence is very far down on your list, Kyle.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Lawrence as
Lawrence is not even a top. Lawrence is like your 18th ranked quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I've been swayed a little more with the Jags. I'm still definitely lower than market on Trevor Lawrence, regardless. Like, I just think that there's a few of these guys in the NFL that people are like, this guy should be a great quarterback. He should be this.
I was going to ask, is your Herbert ranking, is that considered low compared to what market is at on Justin Herbert?
I mean, there's also two different things, right? Like, you can be Justin Herbert's a far better quarterback than he is a fantasy quarterback. So
right.
I just want to set that straight. Just like I think Justin Herbert's a far better like regular QB than Trevor Lawrence, for example. Now I think Trevor Lawrence, just to put this argument on his head, is far more appealing this year in fantasy football, specifically after the fact that Slater just went down for the Chargers, who's their number one. He's a guy who protects the blind side.
Huge offensive tackle.
Absolute stud, like one of the best in the leagues, and he's gone, which to me makes a massive difference. But no, like I'm not as high on Hunter as market for sure. He's definitely the guy that I'm just not buying that they're going to be able to play him on 80% of the snaps on both sides of the ball. I think the NFL is way different than what he was playing in last year. But that's not to shut down what Rishi is saying. If I had to stack the team the way, if I had to take the Jag stack, I personally, wouldn't think about, I would say, fuck the running backs. I would take Lawrence. I would take Thomas. And then the guy I would take to be the third is their tight end Strange, who I think is sneaky.
Yeah.
Going to be the guy that is the nuts for them. People also like De'Ami Brown later in the draft. They think he's going to be a guy that can eat into kind of Hunter's, you know, two snaps when he's not on the field. So there's ways to do the Jags. I'm not as high on them as others, but I will say there's a lot of sharp people in the Discord that are basically like, Kyle, you're a fucking idiot. You should be drafting the Jags. So maybe it's a me problem, and you know. And
well,
the Jags are.
I was going to ask each of you like the last question, and this
Can I
go,
give a couple teams that I like before we?
That was what it was basically
Okay.
going to be. I was going to ask you for like your favorite take. Like
Yeah.
it could be very hot, or it could be like relatively conservative. Hot takes are obviously encouraged, but like you develop these affinities for players and predictions that you have heading into the season. What's like your favorite? What's one of your favorites? It could be a team, it could be a stack, it could be a player.
Yeah. So the teams that I like, and I guess my hottest take, and I don't even think it's that hot, is like I think the Niners are going to be unbelievable this year. I don't really care about the injuries at wide receiver. I think that Pearsall is going to be an incredible number one option for them while they get Brandon
number
Knight,
2, George Kittle.
Brandon Knight
Is Pearsall really their number one?
He will
wide
be,
receiver.
and Jawan Jennings, who I don't know if they're going to
Yeah.
sign him or not, but there's some contract rumors. They also signed Demarcus Robinson, who's dealing with.
Ayuk's gone though.
Ayuk's on the team. He's just
Okay.
hurt. He's going to be back in the first 6 weeks. McCaffrey's back. He's fully healthy, which they didn't have him. He was never healthy last year. Like
He was never healthy, but he essentially acts like another receiver too.
Acts like another receiver. He also takes when he's in their offense versus when he's not in their offense. It's night and day. Like you say, like Debo's great. The receivers last year were great. Cool. The two biggest driving factors of this offense are Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Those two guys are the guys. And what I love about it for best ball is it's such a concentrated usage. Kittle and McCaffrey are going to be the guys that get their touches. Pearsall is going to get touches. Purdy is going to be facilitating it. I think Brock Purdy has an MVP ceiling this year. I truly believe that. Not saying he's going to win the MVP, but I think he could absolutely be the MVP of best ball for where you can draft him, for where you can draft these other guys on the Niners. That's kind of like my winning.
I love that one.
They also have the easiest schedule in the NFL, by the way, the easiest schedule in the NFL. So
they have the 3rd or 4th place schedule, right? Yeah, and then NFC West. Yeah,
one of the easiest schedules. So love the 49ers. I also think the Patriots are going to be sneaky good.
Yes.
That's
now we're talking.
You're a Drake May believer, huh?
I'm more of a
fantasy believer.
I'm more of a Mike Vrabel believer than I'm a Drake May believer.
Yeah.
I think that getting Diggs takes so much pressure off him. I've looked at Diggs in terms of how he's looked in preseason. He's coming off an ACL. He's playing week 1. I'll tell you that. I'm not a doctor. That news hasn't come out yet. I'd bet my left nut that fucking Stephon Diggs is playing week 1 with how he's been burning guys in practice. So I guess I'm down a testicle if he doesn't play. But I also like that they're a very easy team to stack. You can get May late. Henderson's the running backs ADP starting to tank, but I love Henderson. Love Diggs for where you can get him. The not hot take.
You have May, by the way, ahead of guys like Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud, and Jordan Love.
Yeah, the Jordan.
That's pretty high on May.
Yeah. I think that the Patriots have the second easiest schedule. Vegas has them having a really high win total. I think they've added 2 wide receivers to this offense, not only Diggs, but Kyle Williams, who I like. You get Hunter Henry as your tight end. They've got a lot of pieces. I think their defense is going to be unbelievable. I'm very high on Vrabel. I think Vrabel is going to elevate the entire Patriots team.
Yeah.
So I'm willing.
And quarterback rankings for fantasy is also very different than you were just generally ranking quarterbacks. Okay.
I
know. Give us your last one.
Not hot take, but just something for fantasy. People, I think, sometimes look at it's like this is too obvious, like this can't happen, whatever. Like I still think that the Buccaneers for fantasy football, for best ball specifically, are being underdrafted. Like
really?
As a whole, I think the Bucs offense last year was a top 5 offense in the NFL. They added Ibuka. They're going to feature Bucky Irving significantly more than they did last year. Their offense is going to be insane. So their offense is going to be Baker Mayfield at quarterback. You're going to have Bucky Irving and Rashad White as your running backs. You're going to have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Emeka Ibuka, the kid from Ohio State, as their 1, 2, and 3 receivers. They also have McMillan, who as their 4th option, who's a stud, especially for a 4th option. Kate Otten is tight end. and they're just, to me, a team that are going to constantly be in games that are shooting out. Love their schedule for the best ball playoffs, which is also important. And I'm a huge believer in Baker. I don't really care about the old part of Baker's career. I think Baker has figured it out, and it is a guy that's going to be an incredible quarterback in this league this year as well. So those are the two hot takes and one less hot take, but just don't be afraid to buy on Baker again this year.
I love that. Rishi, give us one or two of your favorite takes. Could be a player, could be a team, a guy that you're drafting farther down, or even like a team that you think is going to surprise.
Yeah, so I'm in agreement with Kyle that I'm a buy on the Patriots, mostly from a fantasy standpoint.
7.5 is their win total, it looks like.
Yeah, and I think they're like a 9-win team. I think Drake May is a really solid fantasy option. You know, again, when you can have a quarterback that does it with his legs, I think that's a really big deal. They made some really solid draft picks. Putting in Diggs was really awesome. Everyone's high. Now, like, Trevion Henderson's way too high. Everyone's on this guy.
He's overdrafted now.
Yeah, and honestly, for good reason. He's an absolute stud. He brings everything you'd want to. I think you actually might get a bargain on Ramondre Stevenson now. But separately, because we've talked about the Patriots, I think the offense, aside from the sneaky, the Jags offense that I mentioned, I think an offense where you could have 3 wide receivers potentially all outscoring their potential, and an offense that'll just be humming is the Bears. Caleb Williams, obviously, was touted as one of the best of all time. The next Patrick Mahomes had as bad of a rookie season as you can have. And I think there's still some mechanical issues there. But Ben Johnson, obviously the offensive guru, comes into that within the division, comes in to take over. And I think there is some overhype to Ben Johnson, but they have so many great drafted players as of recent.
Yeah.
And with Caleb Williams, you'll have DJ Moore on one side. You'll have Rome Odunze from last year rookie on the other side. They drafted Luther Burden. They drafted Loveland from Michigan. They have all these young guys. They're running back. They have like DeAndre Swift. So, that's a little bit of
it's a tough division, though. Everybody in that division has a win total of 8.5 or higher.
And I think there'll be a lot of scoring in that division, which makes it really fun.
Minnesota's 8.5, Green Bay's 9.5, and Detroit's still 10.5.
Yes. So I'm about buy on, I guess a buy low on Caleb Williams after last season.
Maybe even Bears division bet. Like, would you even go as far to say they could be a sleeper? It happens every year where teams that finish last in their division, it happens every single year. There's at least one of it that flips it.
There's 2 good points there. One, I think from the offensive standpoint, I love the fantasy prospect. Their defense is actually quite loaded, like in a real NFL football
defense
standpoint.
Was good down the stretch last year.
They were,
I remember that clearly.
I think that the Lions take a big step backwards because of the offensive line and things that way. So when you're talking about winning a division, I think that with Minnesota, with JJ McCarthy, basically a rookie quarterback, because he didn't play last year. Addison suspended 3 games. They could take a step backwards, and they were kind of a little bit lucky in some instances last year. I do think Green Bay is going to be the real deal again. But I think it'll be, between Green Bay and the Bears. And I think the Bears are an interesting underdog to win that division if Caleb Williams and crew can get it humming. And yesterday he threw, I think he was above 70% against the Bills preseason. But I mean, they looked pretty dialed yesterday, which is the first time I've seen that offense really going. So I really like a buy on the Bears. And really, I would say out of that offense, the sleeper, I like Luther Burden a lot. And it's largely because he's a slot wide receiver in a Ben Johnson offense. Ben Johnson, you saw what he did to St. Brown, who was kind of an underdrafted wide receiver who's not really like the most athletic guy, but he made him an absolute all-pro wide receiver. I think Luther Burden has that same potential.
Very quickly, but just more big picture while I have you guys, as the wheels are starting to turn for my own NFL research on like the futures market and stuff like Super Bowl and divisional bets. Do you guys have any strong opinions on like Super Bowl or AFC or NFC winner? Have you made any futures bets yet, Kyle?
No, there was a couple props.
Do you typically bet preseason futures for NFL? I've found a lot of success in win totals and preseason divisional and Super Bowl bets, it's like my favorite. NFL futures might be my favorite market to bet into.
Yeah, I do a couple. I'm not as big as
Yeah.
into you. I'm a big props guy.
Yeah, I know you are. Yeah.
Doing the anytime.
I don't do any of them, and I need to get into it because I know you guys print.
Those that's the stuff I like doing. But there's some like I loved like if you're just looking for like a straight shot bet, like if Baker Mayfield plays 17 games this year, he's smashing his passing yards over under. I think it's the biggest layup bet of all time. That was the one that jumped off the page for me. I was shocked at where the line was even set. I think it was like 3,800 last year. He threw 45 with like 35 touchdowns or something like that. It wasn't.
And they still don't have much of a running game, do they?
They do. They have a way better running game. But
did they draft somebody or bring somebody in?
Bucky Irving last year was the guy they drafted, and he had an 1,100-yard season, but he wasn't their number one feature back for the entire year. They really started using him more towards the end of the season. Rashad White was the other guy. I think that those roles will be flipped though, and Bucky Irvin's electric. Like he is a football player. Yeah, but
what about Super Bowl? Who do you think's the best team in the NFL?
Oh God, I mean, I know this is super lame, but like, I mean, both the Eagles and the Chiefs like are going to be incredibly hard to knock off. If I'm going to give you I could just see a situation where Mahomes goes like scorched earth this year. After
you think that we could get a Eagles Chiefs repeat? I was going to throw the Ravens.
Wouldn't that be a three in a row, or am I making that up? Yeah. So I don't know. I mean that yeah. I mean I'm trying to think of like more of a sleeper, like a less.
Well, I mean, would you consider the Ravens a sleeper? No, right? They're probably the third best team in the NFL.
I guess you could say they're a sleeper in the sense that just the Chiefs and the fucking Eagles are juggernauts and like they're like one step below.
Who do you guys think is more likely to dethrone Mahomes?
I'll say
Lamar or Josh Allen, though.
Who is more likely to? I think it's probably Josh Allen.
Yeah. Rishi, what about you?
Lamar, I would agree. Traditionally, I think Josh Allen's a better player than Lamar Jackson, but I think the roster that the Ravens have relative to the Bills is much superior. Like the defensive side is absolutely loaded, and I think this is the year. I think Baltimore's made enough additions to where.
That's what I was going to say too. I really like Baltimore.
On paper, it's insane. It is absolutely. Obviously, there's a lot of things that come off that. As far as like a sleeper team, some questions on coaching, but I do kind of like what they've done a little bit this offseason. I think the Cowboys are kind of interesting at like 50-1. I think Dak Prescott now has Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. I think Pickens is in for a monster season. Obviously, the defensive side of the ball is a different thing, but it's tough to pick long shots in the NFL. And I think the Cowboys they're a little bit interesting. But it probably is like one of these favorites that are going to be Super Bowl.
Now, I keep saying this is my last question, but this actually is, Kyle. I do need like an official State of the Union because Rishi had me thinking about that division. I do need like an official heading into the season State of the Union for the Giants and where you're at with that team, where your expectations are at for 2025.
I think they have like a 7-win team written all over them.
I'd go lower.
Yeah, well, whatever you want to say. I mean, their roster this year I like better than I've liked it in the past. I do think the defense is just going to be a defense that keeps them in games. I think that the QB play, God help me if it's not, but it's got to be better than it's been the last couple of years, even with an older Russ. I think they'll probably it's an interesting dynamic right now, right? Because you've told Dable and shown that they're basically coaching and owning for their jobs, and they sign Russell Wilson, and that's the guy they're going with when they're coaching for their jobs. So you're coaching for your jobs, like your life is on the line. You're going to Russ Wilson. Wilson's looked fine in the preseason. I'm curious to see how long of a leash he has with how good darts looked in the preseason.
Yeah,
I think preseason is preseason though. Like I think that nothing to me, like nothing means anything until you see it on the field. But
what do you think of Dart?
I think he is a good prospect. I think what I like about Dart from what I've seen from him early is that relative to Daniel Jones never pulled the trigger, which was part of the problem. On top of the fact that he had all these other issues as well, but part of the thing that was most infuriating about him is you would see a guy that had a step and he just wouldn't let go of the ball. And you're like, dude, you got to fucking make that throw. Yeah. I don't think Dart has any of that, which I like. I think if Dart sees a guy that has a step, he's fucking making the throw and he's not thinking twice about it. So, yeah, I like that he's a little bit of he's not cocky in interviews or anything, but he's got a little aura. You know what I mean?
He's got some swagger.
He's got that swagger, which I like about him. So I do think that they drafted the best player in the draft this year as well. I think Abdul Carter is the best player in the draft.
Their defensive line is wild.
The defensive line is going to be very impressive. So
6 wins all over it.
Yeah, I mean the problem is with them is they have such a tough schedule, right? I mean, I will say my hot take is a different hot take to change the subject, so I don't have to give you guys a real answer. I think the Commanders regress this year. I think the Commanders are taking a step back this year.
Interesting.
And I will say, and again, I know the Giants plus 6.5 week 1 against the Commanders, I love.
In Washington.
In Washington, I still love it. I still love it. I think that's going to be a close game.
On the Daniel Jones note, I do have a scorching hot take. If we're going from just a Hail Mary
Let's hear it.
And I'm a big Shane Steichen fan. I think that Daniel Jones is going to start for the Colts, and I think he becomes a very relevant quarterback this season. I think that Shane Steichen is a very good coach, and he likes a mobile quarterback, and I actually think that Daniel Jones gets it done with what I think is a well-equipped Colts team. I think they're going to be a little bit interesting, and I think Daniel Jones becomes a relevant fantasy quarterback this year.
I will say this, Rish, and I'm not even kidding. I had the same exact thought, and I was scared because I was like, I'm a Giants fan. This is the most Giants thing to happen. They get rid of him. He goes to the Colts. He's in this good system. He's got a good line. He's got he's got wide receivers. He's got running back, whatever. And then I saw him play in the preseason. He fucking sucks.
I think he's terrible.
Still fucking
Anthony Richardson is somehow worse.
Dude, I'm not kidding. I watched Richardson looked like fucking Jesus Christ in that game. Daniel Jones, we were joking. I was on a bachelor party last weekend or 2 weekends ago, and Daniel Jones was made this throw, and literally they show the replay. We're on a bachelor party with 15 guys. The topic of conversation is from every single person in the room. How does this guy how did he think that making that throw?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. When
he makes a lot of bad decisions, but Steichen makes a lot of magic. And when you have somebody come regular season, like Jonathan Taylor behind you, things just get a little bit different. That is the most talented player.
He's one of my favorite players is Downs. I think in a competent offense, he's an absolute stud.
Downs, Pittman, I think you'll have – that's another – I guess
the fucking tight end.
Last thing to leave it on. I think Colts wide receivers are going to be a big buy too.
And their tight end, the kid they drafted from Penn State.
Yeah, Warren.
Okay, gang, if you want to chat some more best ball with us, Inside Sports Network, we will be doing it all season long. Our NFL and we have it separated as well. So if you are an NFL betting guy like me, we will have a chat where you talk NFL betting. If you're a best ball guy like Kyle, we have a separate best ball chat. If you're an NFL DFS guy and you love playing showdowns based around Sunday Night Football or Thursday Night Football, we will have you covered as well. All for the same price as golf. It's not any more money if you want to get all of our football stuff. And while you guys grind away at football, I will keep things on the rails with golf all throughout the fall swing. We'll have ownership and articles every single week for these crazy fall swing events as well.
You're gonna put your futures card out though, right? Once you've done your research.
Yeah. I mean, the only problem is this year's been a lot more difficult. I have a wedding this weekend that's my best friend from high school. So I'm a groomsman. And so it's my attention from Thursday to Sunday is going to be completely on this wedding. And normally this is the perfect NFL research weekend because I don't have golf to research next week. So I'm going to try and sneak away during this wedding weekend because I still have one more weekend after that. No? Or this is the final weekend before NFL starts?
No, there's one. There's
one more weekend after
next
it.
Weekend.
Okay, good. So I have an extra weekend after that.
Yeah.
I've been tracking some of the movement. There's been some bigger moves that is interesting to me on in the futures market, like win total stuff, but nothing significant. It's a great market to bet into still. So yes, I will have a futures card. We'll have a ton of NFL stuff in the Discord. Awesome. Cheers, guys. Excited for the US Open as well, Rishi. Can't wait. Yeah. You'll have Inside Tennis pod coming out when? Friday
at 3:30 will be live. So obviously feel free to hop in the YouTube. Going over the men's, women's draws, favorite plays for the first round, quarter winners, our outright picks with Gerard Dash, with Jake from the Discord, who's a tennis shark.
Jake's pretty smart, huh, on tennis.
He knows his stuff. Yeah, fortunately we see him aligned quite often, but I'm sure we'll have some different outlooks on the US Open. So look forward to having that chat and having that debate.
Awesome. Love to hear it, guys. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Cheers.